All right, let's do it. Dave Lochran, Adam Sir, it's the NBA Strategy Show. You're going to be seeing a lot of us today, so sit back, enjoy the show, hang out with us for the next 1.5, maybe 1 hour and 15 minutes. We'll see. Only 5 games to touch on. Josh Ingram out there in San Francisco with his wife, enjoying some time off. I'm filling in for him today, here to talk some basketball. What's going on, brother?
How's it going? Nice change of pace to the morning. I didn't realize he'd gone to San Francisco. I was actually wondering where he'd gone.
Yeah, man, he is. He's in San Fran. So that is, well, I think he's there for a few days. I think his wife's out there for work. I don't know. Yeah, I think she's out there for work. And Jerome Aiken says, wow, I'm bugging. You guys kind of look alike. What?
I look nothing like Davis Bertans.
First of all, neither do I. I am much more handsome than Davis Bertans. Anyway, happy to have everybody with us. We've got 5 games to touch on. We'll do all of that, but first, let's say hi to our sponsor, Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports. They are the only place where you can become a baller. Also, where you can get up to $30 in YSRPs, those Yahoo Sports rewards points, simply by signing up with us at awesomemode.com. We'll drop a link into the chat, but the easiest way to do it right now is just go to awesomemode.com. Click on the NBA tab. You'll see the articles. It is the NBA building blocks article, free by EMAC. Right at the bottom of that is the link for Yahoo to sign up. When you do, use that link, use the promo code AWESEMO, AWESEMO, and get up to $30 in YSRPs when you deposit. They're as good as cash to be used on the site to play and win real money. The competition isn't as stiff at Yahoo. It's a great place to play. If you get in early enough on some contests, they have management-free contests, meaning everything paid into the player, in by the player gets paid back out by the player. They have some no veteran contests as well, where if you're new to the game, you're not going up against the better top players in the industry. So there's something for everybody there. And also a nice little welcome gift, $30 in YSRPs when you sign up and deposit through us using the link. Again, use the Cash Building Blocks article. It's free. Click that link and use the promo code AWESEMO when you do. They are the sponsor of the NBA Strategy Show. You got big contest, $40,000 contest tonight, $7.5K to first in the baller, and the $150,000 NFL baller coming up this weekend, $15K to first, $15 to enter. So get in there, enjoy it, win some money, let us know how you did. All right, let's jump into it, man. No lineup study today. Screen share function wasn't working right. Josh is better with production stuff than I am, and certainly better than Adam is. So we're just going to jump right into it. New York and Phoenix. Oh, and by the way, Adam and I will be back with you tonight. So, I'll mention it to you first. Like, this gives us an opportunity to get a first look, kind of like a foundational look, and then pretty much revisit everything we talked about later in the day.
Yeah, exactly. It'll be nice to be able to kind of just, we already know where we stand on stuff, and we can see if anything changes.
All right, so let's kick it off with the New York Knicks and the Phoenix Suns. Right now, the Knicks at home, 3-point dogs, 225 over under. That stood out to me. I definitely thought that you could see a lower total in this game, but it's actually tied for the highest on the slate. 114.3 implied total for the Suns, 110.8 for the Knicks. Yeah, well, let's start with the New York Knicks here. What first of all, like I said, I did not think the total would be as high as it was, but that's a good thing. And the Knicks are one of those teams that have driven both you and me nuts all season long. But, unlike some of the other matchups where they're facing Milwaukee and Giannis plays 21 minutes, or they're facing the Lakers, this game only has a 3.5 point spread. So there's a very good chance that we could see it stay competitive. And meanwhile, injuries to Marcus Morris, who is questionable, Ntilikina, Dennis Smith out, or questionable and out respectively. That's pretty much the only injury news for the Knicks right now.
Yeah, I mean, it terrifies me how appealing I think this game is, because it's the Knicks playing the Suns, and that could go sideways real quick. But yeah, I think that it's obviously an appealing spot for the Knicks. The Suns play at a fast pace. They don't play very well defensively. Marcus Morris questionable. It doesn't change a ton at this point, But if he's out, you do get a usage bump for guys like Julius Randle and RJ Barrett, in an already good matchup. So that would be appealing. If Morris is in, I still really like Randle. I still think Barrett is fine, but you would get more scoring opportunities for them if Morris is out. And then Alfred Payton's salary at $5,500 on DraftKings just seems like a misprice. I don't know if it's because he only played 19 minutes last game, but it's important to keep in mind he was ejected from that game in the third quarter. So it's not like that has anything to do with anything. He played, barring foul trouble, he would have played about 30. God, I'm bad at math in the morning. He would have played about 32 minutes in the first half.
Tell everyone why you're so tired.
What'd you say?
I said, tell everybody why you're so tired today.
Oh, yeah. I started the 3-hour Aaron Hernandez docuseries at about 1 a.m. last night.
So you waited for all the West Coast games to finish and then turn this on. Yeah,
I finished watching basketball, and then I was like, all right, I'll watch an episode of Aaron Hernandez and go to sleep. And I could not stop watching that.
That's awesome. I do want to touch on a few things real quick, not to get off track, but somebody mentioned, he said in chat, I think Awesome needs to keep track of all the analyst picks and rate them. And then someone said they don't give picks, they give opinions. And someone said, yeah, but they have obvious favorites and this and that. Adam and I have been doing shows together for a while. And I'll let you speak on this too. But I feel like the one thing you and I try not to do is just rattle off every player from every game just so we can cover all of our bases. Because it's easy for us to be like, oh, well, I said he was a good play. Or I said I didn't like, or I didn't mention him, or I talked about him, said he was solid when you mention, every starter from every team. It's always been a concerted effort of ours not to just rattle off every single player. But we also, we have our top guys throughout the day, no question. But we also definitely are trying to make it so to point people in the right direction in terms of process and strategy, more so than just like, hey, he's your top play. So if news does break, you know how to make those decisions on your own in the event that something big happens leading up to lock.
Yeah, when I years ago when I started playing, I always felt like the most beneficial shows that I watched were ones where, I was getting an idea of who people liked, but I was also learning why they liked them and what they look at so that I could, kind of get better and start making more decisions for myself. And so, yeah, that's how I approach it too. Like, obviously I'm going to say who I like, who I'm getting in my lineups, who I'm not getting in my lineups, but it's more so, I think, pointing out why I like someone, why I don't like someone, what's changing so that, if you're making your lineups at 6:00 and you look, it's not, Adam and Lofty said this was a good play or whatever, because, anyone can do that and everyone's going to be right a lot and wrong a lot. But it's, they did mention that this guy was out. It doesn't really matter if they liked him. I think that that's a big enough deal that I want to play the guy.
Right, exactly. Chat wants us to talk about Markel Faults, right? I get so many comments on Twitter about that because
I started to troll you and then I got distracted by Aaron Hernandez.
Well, I mean, here's the thing though. Yes, he had a good game, okay? Second career triple-double. His first one was in a meaningless game, by the way, if you want to go back and look at that with the Sixers. He had a very good game. Okay, good. But, we're making a huge deal about a good game from Markel Faults after he was the number 1 overall pick. Does that not say enough about where he is in this stage of his career? Could it be possible that he ends up being a good player? Yeah, sure. Am I still pissed that it didn't work out for the Sixers? Absolutely. Of course. Anybody would be. But I don't know. I'm sure you disagree.
No, I agree.
To me, the fact that it was one game, everyone's like, oh, man, Markel, even our awesome Twitter handles, our social accounts, oh, Markel Folds is good. Show me more than one game because all season long, yeah, he's been okay, but he's done nothing close to this throughout the entirety of the season.
Yeah, I mean, we also had Augustine and Fournier out. I mean, we had Walt Lemon had a game like this last year. One game like this doesn't mean anything. I enjoy it whenever Fultz does well, just because I want Fultz to do well. But I don't think that the game actually proves or disproves anything.
I was right about Matisse Thybulle starting too.
Yeah, that was a good call. Too bad he got in foul trouble.
I know. He's pretty good in the stocks department. He's just
I had a bunch of him on FanDuel, and he had 15 points from stocks.
Yeah, what did he finish with? I think 20, 21 fantasy points.
I think 25 on FanDuel, 22 on DraftKings.
22 on DraftKings, yeah. Like I said, sorry to circle back, but I guess I should ask, any big takeaways from yesterday that we can apply going forward?
Only in the rotations that could be important today for Denver and for Orlando with injuries.
Mike F says, I spent 2+ years bleeding money in DFS, then finally sacked up and got Awesemo Plus with Fantasy Cruncher. Just won my first big GPP and couldn't have done it alone. If you're watching and not part of the community, what the hell are you waiting for? That's awesome, Mike. Congrats, brother. He just hit us with a $20 super chat. So
yeah, it's awesome. Congrats. It's always such a good feeling, like the next day after you win one.
I had a dream last night that Josh won $100K.
He almost did that the other day if he hadn't late swapped.
I know. I had a dream that it happened. So I don't know if he's playing today. I legitimately thought about texting him and being like, hey, if you're not playing, you should decide to play today because I think something's going to happen. Stack bundles 2069. Nice. Oh, I love this group. Okay.
He should play too, because a lot of people around me have won 6 figures lately. Like a lot of my circle has, and I am not. So it kind of just seems like I'm in the part of my downswing where everyone else wins but me.
Yeah, that's one of those feelings that can be really miserable when you put your head on the pillow each night. Yeah, I mean, whatever. It always turns around. It's a very much a roller coaster ride. It's an up and down game for sure. As my dog rubs her ass across the carpet. Come on. Look over and she's scooting. You can't do that. All right. The rest of the New York Knicks, though, I think we're both we're on the same page in that there's definitely something to be said for this game being really appealing, even though it shouldn't be. So let's assume Morris plays. How are you prioritizing the Knicks today?
Assuming Morris plays, I would say that Randall is still the top guy for me from the Knicks. 8K on DraftKings for someone that in competitive games is playing 33, 34 minutes and producing like he is really, really appealing. Then I would say $5,500 Payton. Morris and Barrett would probably both be more secondary options for me. Like I think that their price is correct, whereas I think Randall and Payton are pretty clearly underpriced. And then Mitchell Robinson would be pretty heavily dependent on projected ownership. His minutes haven't been there lately, but he's obviously the type of guy where you're just not going to very accurately predict his minutes on a game-to-game basis. So you're better off approaching guys like that. When their price comes down and their ownership is low, you roster them. When the price goes up or the ownership goes up, you don't, and you kind of just live with the results.
Do you think Alfred Payton, if Ntilikina and Dennis Smith are out, is going to get 30 minutes, 32 minutes, 34, or should
I would go with 32.
Yeah, 32 is where I would have him as well.
Looking at the game against Milwaukee, his stint in the first quarter, he played about 9 minutes. He subbed back in with just shy of 8 minutes to go. He subbed out with 2.5 minutes to go in the half because he picked up his 3rd personal foul. But if you say he doesn't get in foul trouble there, he would have played about 16 minutes in the first half. Normally, in a situation like that where he got ejected 5 minutes into the third quarter, I'm okay with just kind of extrapolating it out. And we had seen similar minutes from him recently anyway.
Right. Look, this month he's got a 20% usage rate, but you're never going to get anything fantastic from him. 26% rebound rate or assist rate, and right around 1 fantasy point per minute. Alfred Payton, even when he was with New Orleans, was never a bad fantasy contributor. Now, he doesn't exactly have a star-studded cast to facilitate with but yeah, I'd say 5,500 to me is more than appealing. And on the season alone, he's been just shy, I think, like 0.93 fantasy points per minute. No, I'm sorry, 0.98 fantasy points per minute, or 0.99 on DraftKings. So I like it. I like the double-double upside for somebody like Alfred Payton. I really have no problem getting there. I would assume that, let's pull ownership up. I would assume that he's going to have some ownership, right?
It should probably be kept in check, though, because there is potentially a ton of guard value today.
Yeah, that's true. Right now, Alfred Payton is coming in at... Okay, wow. Has it not updated yet? Maybe it didn't update yet. Yeah, okay, we don't have an update on it yet. I'm going to say he's not even showing up. Anything else from the Knicks?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Did you mention Robinson?
Yeah, just that I mentioned him kind of in a broader sense that he's the type of guy where he's really, for me, really heavily dependent on salary and ownership when like the minutes haven't been there lately, but there's no, like he very easily could play 27 minutes. We just have no idea. So when the salary comes down and the ownership comes down, I roster him. When the salary goes up or the ownership goes up, I don't. And you kind of just live with the results. It's really tough with someone like that. And I think kind of a fool's errand to just be like, oh, this is the Mitchell Robinson game. It's more kind of like flowchart. Like, is he low owned? Yes, play him. Is he cheap? Yes, play him.
All right. So moving to the other side, we've got the Phoenix Suns, 3.5 point favorites on the road. Devin Booker last game, really solid performance. With Rubio on and off, he's been a lot better lately. There's no question that having Rubio back in the mix makes him less appealing, especially on DraftKings where he's now $9,000. Ricky Rubio is going to return, or at least expected to return. I don't even think he's on the injury report. So that definitely takes some shine away from Devin Booker. Meanwhile, guys like Kelly Oubre, who played 38 minutes and had 18 fantasy points last game, really, really rough outing. He's in concussion protocol. He is not going to be playing. So I don't know. You have to think you got to know that whatever he sustained, whatever injury he sustained to his head in last game probably affected how terrible he was, shooting 4 for 16. But he's sidelined here, and that's taking literally 37, 38 minutes in regulation out of this starting lineup against the New York Knicks.
Yeah, it opens up a little bit of usage, but for Booker and Rubio, but more importantly, it opens up value because of how many minutes Oubre plays. I think that you'll get plenty of Cam Johnson, who's only 3,100. He's normally been Oubre's primary backup. He played 25 minutes last game because Okobo essentially got benched and they played Booker at point. But with Oubre out, I would expect at least mid-20s in minutes from Cameron Johnson. You probably also get some additional run for Mikal Bridges, who had pretty much been splitting minutes with Dario Saric prior to last game. Last game with Rubio out, you saw him play some time alongside Saric as well. So I think that Bridges and Johnson are the two biggest beneficiaries in terms of minutes. Bridges' price tag is already more or less where it should be, I think, but Cam Johnson's essentially the minimum.
Okay. Yeah. The Cam Johnson, I would say, probably makes the most sense just in terms of getting some value here. Like with Bridges playing, if I would have a lot more interest in Bridges if he didn't start.
Agreed.
Right? I mean, they're not playing all of your minutes alongside Devin Booker is going to suck now, or is preferable. I guess at the same time, if Bridges starts, does he play 35 minutes? Then that's a different story if he's playing 27 minutes off the bench. But he's definitely more productive as a reserve, not playing alongside Devin Booker. Would you say Cam Johnson to you and Bridges are top values on this slate?
It's tough because like point per dollar wise for Cam Johnson, yes, absolutely. Because if you're going to get 25, 26 or more minutes at 3,100, it's pretty tough not to be a top point per dollar value. He's not going to project as a great like raw score guy. So how much of him I get will in large part depend on what kind of value we're getting or we think we're getting from Orlando and from Denver. But I think that point per dollar wise, he'll be a top value. Bridges will be, I think, a good option, but not quite as good since his salary is up already to 4,500 on DraftKings. And one other guy to keep an eye on, and you could certainly take a flyer on to use in tournaments if the ownership isn't going to be there could potentially be a trickle-down effect to Dario Saric picking up a few more minutes.
Okay, yeah, I think that makes sense as well, depending on where Monty Williams wants to actually use him. What about the backcourt? Are you in agreement that overpaying for Devin Booker here? Actually, I wouldn't even say in agreement because I haven't taken a firm stance on this yet. I think a lot of it comes down to what are we doing with the other high-priced options on this slate. Several of them are out, and others are in good spots. So Devin Booker, you've got a pretty hefty price point on him. Is it worth it against the Knicks?
I don't think he's overpriced. I think that Rubio looks a little bit better at his salary across the same position. I like Payton, but I still think it's a really good matchup for Booker. I think he should see a little bit more usage without Oubre out there. One other thing kind of doubling back on Oubre that I just remembered, Aaron Baines could be interesting because we haven't seen it recently, but we have seen Baines play alongside DeAndre Ayton. And the last time the Suns played the Knicks, they did go that route. They had Ayton start next to Baines. Not saying I think he's going to start, but if potentially you could get some minutes, against this bigger front court of Baines and Ayton, $4,300 Baines kind of fits into that Saric category where people probably won't look there as quickly as they'll look to Bridges and Johnson, but there could be a bump.
Anybody else for the Suns?
No.
All right.
Oh, Ayton. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and right now, what you're seeing from these guys is just completely splitting. Well, not splitting down the middle, but Ayton getting all the minutes that Baines doesn't get. And I guess if last game is any indication of what we could see going forward, DeAndre Ayton played off the bench, but also saw a ton more minutes than Ayton. I mean, or than Aaron Baines. He played 33 minutes to Ayton or to Aaron Baines 15 minutes. Pretty significant development there.
Yeah, no question. I just pulled up Popcorn Machine for the last time the Knicks and the Suns played, which was January 3rd. In that game, DeAndre Ayton played 37 minutes. Aaron Baines played 29. So they
interesting.
Yeah. So that's
what 67 total minutes between the two. You said 37 and 29?
Yeah, 37 and 29. It's just interesting because we haven't seen them go that route over the last couple of games, but it is a bigger Knicks front court, and they very clearly went that route very heavily the last time they played. With Oubre being out, you could certainly see Johnson and Bridges picking up more minutes at the 3, Saric kind of play his normal role or, a little bit more, and then just play a lot of Ayton and Baines next to each other.
It's not a crazy idea at all. At Ayton's price point, $7,700 on DraftKings, is that enough for you to say, you know what, I'll project him for 32 minutes against a bad Knicks team and get to a decent amount of him, or would you need him to be cheaper? Like I said, $7,700 on DraftKings right now is. I don't think it's unreasonable. I think it's tough to say that we can trust these minutes to be the same every day, but then in the same spot, like this is a number 1 overall draft pick. I don't see why you would want to continue giving him 26 minutes or so while Aaron Baines gets 22 or 25 in the starting lineup.
Yeah, I'm fine going 32 on Ayton today because I think there's just multiple ways for him to get there. It could be like last game where he just plays more minutes than Baines. And like we were just saying, I think that there's a pretty decent chance that they play at least some minutes alongside each other. So I think going to 31, 32 minutes for Ayton makes a lot of sense and actually makes him look like my favorite option out of the expensive Suns.
Okay. Yeah, $7,400 on FanDuel as well. So I don't think any of these prices are that difficult to get to. Let's move on to Milwaukee and Boston. In chat, we already have a lot of people talking about whether to fade or play Giannis Antetokounmpo. That's obviously right now a big question for a lot of people. You and I, early on, it's still very early, but we'll try and do the best we can to nail this down. Right now, you've got the Milwaukee Bucks, pretty big favorites here, 9.5-point favorites at home, 116.3 implied total for them. It's the highest on the slate. Game has a 223 total. Starting with the home team, starting with Giannis, coming off an absurd performance where he had 37 points, 9 rebounds, 4 assists, and a block in 21 minutes. Is just really one of the most efficient basketball performances you will ever see in your life. And we witnessed it the other day against the Knicks. But here he is going up against a quality Boston team, but also a Boston team that no longer has Al Horford, who did a pretty good job of not containing Giannis, but at least making life a little bit more difficult for him.
Yeah, and I think there's a couple things that make Giannis a little bit easier to get to today than I think that it normally is. For one, not normally, but a lot of times you're getting those slates where you're choosing between Giannis, Luka, LeBron, Harden. And so the minutes are a real factor there when you're talking about players that have the ceilings that those guys do and play so many more minutes than Giannis. But those guys aren't on the slate. So Giannis, I think, projects as the top scorer by, a pretty solid margin. So there's definitely benefit to getting to him if you can. On top of that, it's looking like we're going to have tons of value today. We already talked about the Phoenix game. We have Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown questionable for Boston. We have 60% of the Denver starting lineup questionable. We have Orlando dealing with injuries. There's probably going to be a lot of value. So it won't really be that hard to get there. And then they're also playing a good Boston team. They're still 9-point favorites. It could be a depleted Boston team on the road on a back-to-back. There's still a pretty decent chance that Milwaukee destroys them, but it's at least not the Knicks or something like that. So I think that it's just a more favorable slate for getting to Giannis from just an overall kind of general view than it normally is.
Do you have Brown and Tatum in and out, both in?
Right now I have Brown in and Tatum out.
Yeah, I've got Tatum out, Brown in as well. I mean, obviously it's very early, so it's difficult to say. But I think that would so we have Brown dealing with the thumb sprain, right? Yeah, a thumb sprain, and I believe he played through the whole thing. Actually had a really solid game. Meanwhile, with Jason Tatum, who is only power forward eligible now on DraftKings, he's dealing with a knee injury, and it's funny how these minor ailments this season specifically appear to be a lot more than just minor. Like with Karl Anthony Towns was out again yesterday, and then other injuries like Kristaps Porzingis. That was a weird one, right? He was probable all day long, and then he goes to being a late scratch. We had somebody on Twitter asking us about that. Was pretty pissed off. So I don't know. Like, is this just a one-game thing for Tatum, or is this going to be another sore knee or knee strain or whatever that keeps you out for 10 games? I really have no idea. So.
Right, and like I said, that I have Brown projected in and Tatum out right now. If I have, and that's just kind of my baseline because that's what happened last night. But if I had to guess, I would guess Tatum plays here. He was listed as probable yesterday. It was the front end of a back-to-back. They're playing, a big game against Milwaukee. If you're kind of trying to give rest days, you would think that being at home against the Pistons is a spot where you don't need Tatum. Obviously they did, but I think that there's a better than 50% chance he plays here.
I think that's a fair point. Yeah, it is a knee for Porzingis, isn't it? Too. I think so. Yeah. Yeah, I think he's dealing with a knee as well. You can't be excited about that.
Is either a knee or a hamstring? I don't remember.
I think it's a knee, but either way, like you see this a lot. So I don't even like to speculate on it. Maybe it's a maintenance day and they just said it's his knee. Very possible. But let's finish with Milwaukee first. When you're looking outside of Giannis, right? This game does have, because the Bucks are a fast-paced team, so it's a pretty significant pace-up spot for Boston, pace down for Milwaukee. 223 total. Again, nothing crazy. It's still one of the higher ones on a small abbreviated slate. But once you get past Giannis, are we looking at a $6,300 Eric Bledsoe, who has was back in the starting lineup after being out? Minutes are all over the place because of these blowouts, but in some competitive games, they weren't even that competitive. Like the 10th, they won by 21 points. He played 31 minutes. He played 30 minutes in a 9-point win over Golden State. I do think that Bledsoe can get to the 30-minute mark. It's tough to say, but assuming this game stays close, what are your thoughts on, these secondary guys behind Giannis like Eric Bledsoe and Chris Middleton? Bledsoe, who is pretty cheap.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they're both good tournament options at the very least, just because like a lot of Milwaukee's offense, of course, runs through Giannis, but it's also just overall a very concentrated offense where if it's not Giannis, it's Middleton and Bledsoe, to a lesser extent Lopez. Wes Matthews does nothing. The bench, as far as providing a lot of actual points, doesn't do a whole lot. So it's always really appealing when you get a team like that, that you know where the offense is coming from. I wish that Budenholzer's rotations would stay the same, because a couple of games ago you were getting Giannis and Middleton staggered, which made Middleton look a lot more appealing. Last game against the Knicks, you didn't get a true stagger from anyone, but Bledsoe did play all but 2 first-half minutes that Giannis wasn't on the floor. If that's going to be the case, then Bledsoe gets a bump. It's just the problem has been that it's kind of bounced around from game to game and hasn't been consistent. So I think that Bledsoe and Middleton both look fine. I don't think either one will be a priority for me. I think that Giannis is the only real priority I get to from Milwaukee.
Yeah, certainly the only priority. I do think Brook Lopez is kind of interesting, though. Assuming you get 28, I mean, he's played in, again, the problem is we have to keep referencing competitive games because there aren't that many of them. But Brook Lopez could come out here and get 28, 29 minutes. Is it a probability? I don't know. I don't know how close this game stays, but I do think in tournaments at 4,800, that's not a crazy price point on Brook Lopez, assuming this game, again, stays somewhat competitive.
Yeah, I agree with you. Would you rather go 4,800 for Lopez or 4,700 for Robinson?
Robinson sure has the ceiling, but I would still rather go $100 more for Brook Lopez, knowing that he has an easier opportunity, or he has a easier path to get to 29, 30 minutes, or let's even say 28 minutes. I think that's more reasonable. I'll say 28. And while he's a .96 DraftKings point per minute player on the season, Mitchell Robinson is not much higher than that. I think he's like 1.03. So I'll take the shot at an extra 8 minutes from Lopez.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I don't have like a strong opinion either way. I think I would slightly go with Robinson just because I like the matchup a little bit better. But yeah, I don't think it's a clear answer one way or the other.
No, it's definitely close. And both of them definitely present some risk as well.
And you can also throw Baines into the mix as the same exact sort of play too.
Right, who might play 18 minutes, might play 28 minutes. Yeah.
Right.
How about on the other side with the Boston Celtics? They are pretty big road dogs, but so is everyone against Milwaukee these days. I guess if we assumed everyone plays and is active, then they're a whole lot less appealing than if, say, Tatum is out. Also might not stay as competitive, but Kemba Walker's, a 1.36 fantasy point per minute guy with Tatum off the floor this season. Brown has seen a slight uptick. Gordon Hayward kind of the same with a little bit more usage, less efficiency. It definitely changes the dynamic of this team, but is it enough if Tatum is out to change it to the point where we really like these Boston guys?
If Tatum's out, if Tatum is out and Brown is in, I would still be really interested in Brown, really interested in Hayward. If it's the other way around, I'd be interested in Hayward and Tatum. Basically, I think that the wings, if one of the wings is out, the other two look really appealing because the minutes should be there. We know that Milwaukee does kind of funnel toward 3-point attempts, and Brown and Hayward are both cheap. Tatum's price is more expensive, but still reasonable. I think those are the guys that if someone's going to benefit from the Milwaukee matchup, I would expect it to be that group of guys. Kemba does lead the team in 3-point attempts, but Milwaukee's also been the fourth most efficient defense defending against the pick and roll, which is a big deal for Kemba. So I think Kemba's salary is okay, but I think that I would give the edge to Brown or Hayward.
Yeah, really interesting dynamic when you look at the Milwaukee Bucks defense, because no team allows more 3-point attempts to their opponents this season. And they've also allowed relatively high efficiency on 3-pointers, but at the same time, they're the best defense overall in the league. And like you've said, when you do a good job of limiting ball handlers in the pick and roll, you can really quiet guys like Kemba Walker and make life really difficult for him. Do you want to hit on anything else specifically from Boston? Of course, this will be one that you and I revisit pretty heavily tonight in the deeper dive when we get that news.
Daniel Tice is still $4K. I'm not exactly sure how his salary came down from yesterday when he played 28 minutes and played really well. But I think that's a spot. It's a pretty good value spot.
Okay. New Orleans and Utah. Get to this one, also tied for the highest total. But before we do, the promo code NBA Strategy, one word, gets you 50% off your first week of Awesemo Plus. All of the tools you get are the same ones that Alex Baker, Awesemo, developed and uses himself every day. The ownership projections, the player projections, the top stack tools, the boom or bust tools. We had the Fantasy Cruncher add-on, which, as we saw from our kind contributor earlier on in chat, who just took down a tournament, getting Fantasy Cruncher and Awesemo has helped him to stop bleeding money in DFS. Congrats again, dude. But we've got a lot of those statements because it is a different process and it definitely helps people win. And you could get 50% off your first week just by using the sign-up code NBA Strategy, all one word. So, mitigate any risk you think there is, even though we know you'll enjoy it once you take the plunge, by getting 50% off the top of your first week and being able to look around and get an idea of what we have to offer. We also have the Express package for $3.95 a week, but in all seriousness, personally, you would want to just go with the all access, like Awesemo Plus Platinum, because that gives you access to everything, and that's what you're going to want, and you get 50% off. So use that promo code NBA Strategy, get you all of the tools, get you all of the premium content. The deep dive written by Adam is a phenomenal, the most comprehensive article out there, lineup builder, and so much more. So check it out, and when you do, come stop into our premium Slack chat, say what's up. It's a great community over there, people talking DFS all day long. Promo code NBA Strategy, awesemo.com/join. Use that promo code at checkout. All right, New Orleans and Utah. We've got the Utah Jazz here, 5-point favorites, 225.5 total. So actually, this one is the highest by half a point. Pelicans 110.5 implied, 115.5 for the Utah Jazz. Let's start with the Pels at home. And first things first, let's go ahead and cover this injury news, Adam, because I think this and then Denver. Denver's another one with Jamal Murray getting carried off the court yesterday is pretty significant. Drew Holiday has already been ruled out. Kenrich Williams, for whatever that's worth, is out. J.J. Redick remains questionable. And then Ingram, Okafor, and Favors are all probable. But Holiday's out. Redick might sit again. Some big developments here, and it looks like everyone else plays, but nevertheless, on a 5-game slate, there's a lot to get into.
Yeah, I think that this one is a little bit more cut and dry than the next 2 games we'll get into, because we've been dealing with these Pels injuries for a while now. So we know kind of who the beneficiaries are, how the rotations have been looking, and the salaries have come up a bit as well. So when you look to someone like Lonzo Ball or Derrick Favors, not quite as appealing for me at their salaries now. Obviously Lonzo's been playing really big minutes. He's been playing really well without Drew, but it's not a great matchup against Utah. He's up to almost 8K on DraftKings. That puts him, more expensive than Rubio. It puts him a little, less expensive than Booker, but kind of right in that middle where it's tougher for me to get there, and that's excluding all the other guard value. The guy that really stands out though is Brandon Ingram. Assuming that he's back, he's been averaging about 1.3 DraftKings points per minute without Holiday on the floor this year. He's playing 37, 38 minutes in competitive games, and his price tag on DraftKings just still hasn't moved. He's sitting at 8,400. It looks like one of the most mispriced guys on the slate to me.
Okay. And I feel like we've said that a lot about these New Orleans players over the past couple of games, couple of weeks. Where did you say he's 8,800?
8,400 on DraftKings.
Yeah, 8,400 on DraftKings. And plus, Ingram was very inexpensive last game, but he ended up sitting. So right. I think you and I were both very high on him, and he ended up not playing. But he's been spectacular, man. And you got him coming down from like 9,200 where he was just a couple of games ago. The Utah Jazz defensively, yes, they're a fine team, but this is still the highest total on the slate. Utah's defense, they're good, but they're not the type of team where you just say, all right, I can't play anyone against them anymore, especially with Drew Holiday out. If J.J. Redick's out, you take another shooter off the floor. I like that a lot. Let's circle back one more time, though, to Lonzo. He's $7,900 on DraftKings. On FanDuel, he's $6,500, which is just insane. I think there's of course, a massive discrepancy there. For me, Lonzo on FanDuel is a very, very solid play. Is he worth getting to on DraftKings?
I don't really see getting to him on DraftKings just because, like I said, Booker and Rubio in that price range. But then also you have Alfred Payton, who we both really like right. at a cheaper price point. You have most likely Monte Morris. You have, potentially Markel Faults with Orlando banged up. So there's a lot of guards where I don't feel like I need to overpay for Lonzo. I agree with you on FanDuel. 6,500 for Lonzo looks really good. I think he is probably actually my top guy from New Orleans on FanDuel.
Yeah, that's just too cheap. $32 for Lonzo on Yahoo is reasonable. It's definitely reasonable, but you've still got him more expensive than a lot of other guys who are also underpriced, which we'll hit on all of them in just a little bit. So yeah, for me, Ingram is my top play on the Pelicans from on DraftKings, and then Lonzo would be my top guy on FanDuel. Let's break down just a little bit further some of these secondary options for the New Orleans Pelicans. Derrick Favors, like we said, probable coming into this game. Does the price point on him make any sense to you at $5,900 on DraftKings? Do you think that's palatable at all? He's $5,400 and power forward eligible on FanDuel, and then on Yahoo, Derrick Favors is $24 and center eligible. So power forward eligible on FanDuel at $5,400.
Yeah, I think the FanDuel salary looks really good. The DraftKings salary looks okay too. The concern obviously is how many minutes he plays, because anytime you get Derrick Favors coming back from injury, I get a little bit nervous just because of how extensive his injury history is and how teams generally are cautious with him. But even if you give him around 26 minutes, he's a point per minute guy. He's got obviously the potential for more, but it is a tough matchup dealing with Utah. So I think power forward on FanDuel at that price tag is really appealing. On DraftKings, it's not quite as appealing because you just have so many underpriced guys that aren't dealing with Rudy Gobert.
And if Redick does end up sitting, has anyone stayed cheap enough to where we can actually make sense of rostering them?
The problem is that they just have so many guys that they can use. Like Josh Hart would benefit. He's really cheap, especially on FanDuel. He's not the best per minute producer, but the minutes should be there. Potentially Nickeil Alexander-Walker gets more run. Potentially Frank Jackson gets more run. Kind of depends on how they're playing. We saw, I think it was 2 games ago where we were all on Alexander Walker. Frank Jackson came out and just started knocking down threes nonstop and took all the minutes.
Last game, that's what Alexander Walker played only 14 minutes. You're talking about, wasn't it against?
I think it was 2 games in a row.
Okay, because against the Pistons on the 13th, Alexander Walker played only 14 minutes.
Yeah, in the Boston game on the 11th, he got to 23 minutes, but it's because it was a blowout. In the first half, he played like 6. Yeah, he played like 6 minutes in the first half. That was when Frank Jackson came in and just couldn't miss.
Yeah, actually, Frank Jackson played 30-plus minutes in both of those games.
Right. Yeah, so I think that, if Redick is out, potentially you take a shot there, but Jackson's up to 4K. Alexander Walker's still 3,600. They would both just be guys where if I'm playing 150 lineups, I'll get to some. I would prefer whichever one is cheaper. Like, I think Jackson has the slight edge on minutes, but there's no reason Alexander Walker can't do exactly what Jackson did to Alexander Walker. Like, I don't think that Gentry is going into this game being like, oh, this guy's definitely playing X amount of minutes. I think it's kind of just how the game's going.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. Yeah, it's tough to say because if Redick ends up sitting, now Ingram played that Boston game, right? He was active. He played 31 minutes. I guess that game was completely out of control by the end. So I don't know if he was actually dealing with an injury there because he didn't play any of the fourth quarter, or if this was just a scenario where there's no reason to keep him out there. I think it's the latter. But I guess the only player missing from that game, so let's say Redick is out. We know Ingram's going to play. The only one missing from that game was Favors, and I can't imagine that had any impact on Frank Jackson's minutes. So even with Ingram probable, if Redick is out, it's still a possibility that Frank Jackson gets a lot of minutes. But then at the same time, that was a blowout, and Frank Jackson played like 11 of 12 minutes in the fourth quarter, down by 30-plus points.
Yeah, exactly. I don't have a whole lot of trust in any of the secondary options on the Pels.
Yeah, for sure. How about the Utah side? We had our chat talking quite a bit about Donovan Mitchell and a price decrease that we've seen on him. He's come down to $7,400 on DraftKings. He's on FanDuel. You've got Donnie Mitchell at $6,600, Adam. And then get this, over on our sponsor Yahoo, he's 31. So Donovan Mitchell on FanDuel and Yahoo specifically is very cheap today, going up against a New Orleans team that we've said it many times. It kind of almost doesn't matter who's on the floor. They've been burned specifically in transition. That's where defensively they've struggled the most. But they're a fast-paced team that really has not played quality defense all season long. How do you feel about Donovan Mitchell's price point on FanDuel and Yahoo against a Pelicans team that ranks 25th in defensive rating and in pace, playing at a top 7 pace, 6 actually on the year?
I mean, you can throw DraftKings in there too at 7,400. It's obviously not as good as 6,600 on FanDuel, but it's still really cheap.
I agree, but I'm saying on we definitely talk about them all, but FanDuel and Yahoo is like almost egregious.
Right. Like I hate when that happens because it's kind of just like it's not even like interesting. Like right. At least where he's like mid 7Ks, he can hurt you. At 6,600, assuming he plays his full minutes and doesn't like get hurt or something, like the guy averages over a fantasy point per minute. We can talk all we want about how he hasn't been everything we wanted him to be since Conley got hurt, but he still averages over a fantasy point per minute, and he's playing 34, 35 minutes in competitive games. It's just kind of a free square, which is really weird at a mid-tier price range, but it's just such a high floor, and he still has a high ceiling.
Right. Now
his usage has come down since Jordan Clarkson joined the team. He's still averaging so since Conley's injury, he's averaged 1.07 DraftKings points per minute with a 30.8% usage rate. Since the Jazz acquired Jordan Clarkson, his usage rate's 28.5%. He still averaged 1.07 DraftKings points per minute, though. The reason I point out Clarkson is just that Mitchell plays with the second unit, and before Clarkson, that was really beneficial. Now it's him playing with Moutier part of the time and Clarkson like the whole time. So obviously the ball's in Moutier's hands more. Clarkson's shooting a lot, so it's not quite as productive as it was before.
Sure. And you may look at people may look at you and be like, what are you talking about? It's not like Clarkson's that good of a player. All right, well, consider the fact that those minutes before Clarkson were coming with a guy that operates with like 10% usage.
Right. Clarkson has a 25% usage rate since he joined the team. And also for some of those minutes, talking since Conley got hurt, for a while Moutier wasn't really getting minutes either. So you were getting Mitchell just being like the entire ball dominant guy with the second unit. Then you have Moutier out there now, and you have Clarkson out there now. Still, obviously, Mitchell's the best player on the floor, but Clarkson is taking shots from him.
Yeah, Donovan Mitchell with Clarkson. Did you mention his usage with Clarkson on the floor?
No, I was actually about to pull it up.
I got it here. So here's the thing. Okay, Mitchell and Clarkson have played, we have 124 minutes together. Mitchell has a 27% usage rate, 33% assist rate, and 1.22 fantasy points per minute. That seems high.
Well, I mean, the production makes sense because most of those minutes are coming against team's second unit. So like Mitchell should be more efficient, more productive on a per minute basis. It's just that if Clarkson weren't on the floor and you replace him with Dante Exum or something, I would expect him to be even better.
Makes sense. All right, so outside of Mitchell, can we get to somebody like Rudy Gobert, whose price point has now come up quite a bit, 9,200 on both DraftKings and on FanDuel. Rudy Gobert over there on Yahoo's $36, which seems a little bit more palatable, but still pretty lofty price point or pretty lofty expectations for Rudy Gobert if you're going to be paying that much for him. But in the same breath, this is a good matchup against the Pels. That seems a bit pricey to me.
Yeah, it's pretty expensive. It makes him just a tournament guy for me. It's not someone that I would expect to get to in optimal lineups. I think that it is really expensive, especially because there have just been so many guys as we go through this slate where we're kind of laughing at how cheap they are. And then you have Rudy Gobert where, if anything, he's a little bit too expensive.
Did you see Clarkson's price on FanDuel?
I did not.
4,300.
That's really cheap.
I mean, look, we talked a lot about how how he's affected Mitchell. We didn't really talk much about Clarkson. I'm not going to spout off about him being a top option, but $4,300, and he's $13 on Yahoo. I've got to say, in this spot against New Orleans, it's very possible that someone who owns a 25% usage rate, as you mentioned, since coming to Utah, and even in competitive games has been playing 26 minutes with Mitchell active. There's actually a chance that basically a 1 fantasy point per minute guy in Clarkson could come out here and have a pretty solid game and is very, very cheap. 4,313 on FanDuel and Yahoo.
Yeah, those are both really good prices. 52 on DraftKings, not as appealing, but 13 and 43 are both really cheap.
Since he's come to Utah, he's averaging 0.88 fantasy points per minute. Not great, but if you get the minutes with 25% usage, you could certainly do worse. He just has a 7% assist rate, which is atrocious. Do you want to close out Utah for us here?
Yeah, I think that Bogdanovich would be my second option from Utah. He's scoring dependent as well, but he does have a usage rate up between 27 and 28% since Conley's injury. It's obviously a good scoring matchup. You have a good 115 total for Utah. So Bogdanovich, and he plays 33, 34 minutes. So I think Bogdanovich is a little bit underpriced for just how often he shoots.
Clippers, Orlando. Talk a little bit about this one here. The Orlando Magic. Listen, I'm not, maybe I will. Screw it. I'm going to say it anyway. If there was ever a game that felt like the Magic come out and just get blasted to the moon, it's this one, coming off of a win against the Lakers yesterday, a 1-point win. Getting a ton of hype. Markel Faults, best player to have ever lived, best first overall draft pick in the history of the National Basketball Association. I get it. But second of a back-to-back on the road, which is funny because they're playing at the same stadium both nights in a row. So that's good. You don't really have to travel anywhere. But I feel a bit of a letdown game coming. Now, it's not something I'm factoring into my projections, so we won't talk about it any further. But, yeah, I mean, Orlando against the Clippers, they're 11.5-point dogs, Adam, and 217.5 total. Clippers have one of the higher implied totals on the slate, 114.5. Magic at 103 even.
Yeah, so obviously dealing with injury news here, and I agree with you that certainly possible they just get massacred.
Yeah, not having Paul George doesn't help, but still.
Right, and we saw the same thing with the Cavs. Like, they played a really competitive game until the end against the Lakers, and then just came out and played like 2 quarters against the Clippers. But you still have, Fournier, I assume will be listed as questionable. If he's out, you get a bump for Faults, but also like if Augustine's out, you get more minutes for Faults. He played 33 minutes last night. You get more minutes for Terrence Ross, who is still cheap. So with it being a 5-game slate, obviously I'm still going to end up getting to these guys. Faults actually got a price discount on DraftKings down to 5,500. Jay Walker pointed out in our Slack chat, and I thought it was a really interesting point, that on DraftKings, Faults and Payton are the exact same price. If we were to get news that Fournier is ruled out, or I guess even if we don't, probably, I think recency bias probably drives ownership higher on Faults than it will be on Payton, even though they're very, very similar options.
Okay. Yeah, definitely makes sense to me. The fact that they're at the same price point is really interesting. What about Alec Burks being at basically $300 less expensive on DraftKings? Would you throw him into that conversation?
I would put him behind those two just because with Damian Lee coming back, I think you could lose a couple of minutes for Burks.
Okay, so right now, metaphorical gun to your head, Alfred Payton or Marquel Folds, single entry tournament. Who do you go?
Whichever is lower owned, but if they were the same ownership, I would give a slight edge to Payton just because I like his matchup better. A higher team total for the Knicks. I think minutes are going to be about the same. And with Fultz, either he's going to be playing with Fournier and obviously Vooch, which still makes him the third option offensively, or he's going to be playing without Fournier where he gets more opportunities, but he's still playing a very, very good Clippers defense that can key in on him. Whereas, I think Payton just kind of the game is more appealing. So I would give the edge to Payton.
Okay, so would I. And shocker, this is not because I'm being subjective or because I don't like the guy. I just like Payton more in this spot. Now, Markel Faults, the minutes have been solid. But okay, can we just take his last 10 games for a minute? Let's just do this, and then I want to turn it back over to you. Let's just take his last 10 games, okay? Because now the general consensus is that Markel Fultz is is a spectacular first-team All-Star. So you can just take his last 10 games. I will include the triple-double, of course. He's still averaging 1.05 fantasy points per minute. Not bad. Actually, pretty decent. You take that triple-double out of there, and I think he's 0.98. So, not that I'm going to do that, but what I'm saying is, looking at his performances, you haven't been getting like ceiling games from him. You have one really good game. 23, 31, 31, 40, 19, 22, 37, 20, 15. Markel Faults coming off of a good game. I just don't want to get ahead of ourselves. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I mean, the injury news is the really big thing here. Like, if Augustine is in and Fournier is in.
Point. Yeah, that's huge.
Right. If those guys are in, then, it goes to being, well, yeah, Fournier is cheap and plays around 30 minutes, and that's the end of the conversation. It's if Augustine is out and Fournier is out, you're getting a bunch more usage for Fultz if Fournier is out. The minutes are solidified if DJ Augustine is out. And it's kind of like, okay, now you have a $5,500 guy with a 25 or 26% usage rate under these conditions, playing 32, 33 minutes if the Magic stay in this game. That's where it starts to become really a really appealing spot.
For sure. Ben says, sounds like Fultz salt from a Sixers fan. I mean, yeah, there's no chalky. It's kind of embarrassing to see Laffy talk about Fultz like an ex-girlfriend. Dude, what I'm saying is he hasn't shown us that much. That's all I'm saying. Like,
did you watch the Pistons Celtics game last night?
No, I did not.
The way you're talking about Fultz reminds me of the way the Boston broadcaster was talking about Drummond. I think he mentioned like 5 different times in the first half that I don't care if he gets 16 individual rebounds. It doesn't make him good. Like, blah, blah, blah. Like, because I guess Boston's talking about trading for Drummond and he very clearly doesn't want it. But like every opportunity, he would just like start just shitting on Andre Drummond.
I wish I could have watched that. It's great. But okay, I mean, at least you have to see where I'm saying when I say he's been a 1 fantasy point per minute guy since the start of December. I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt there going back to December. And he's averaging like 31 minutes per game, 30 minutes per game over his last 10 or 15. So, like, I don't know. What's your mean projection for a guy like Markel Faults against Pat Bev and the Clippers? Is that crazy?
Right. It's entirely injury dependent. Like, he's played 82 minutes with Vooch on the floor and Fournier off. I'm not going to look at the per minute numbers because obviously they're very, very heavily weighted by how efficient he was last night.
Right.
But 26% usage, 35.8% assist percentage. If you don't worry about Vooch being on the floor so that you get a little bit bigger sample, you get up to 175 minutes without Fournier. Still a 25% usage rate, 35% assist percentage. Fournier obviously makes a big deal, as you would expect, because Fournier is a high usage guy. He's the second highest usage guy on the team behind Vooch. So that's the really big impact for me is Fournier in or out. The negative though, obviously Fultz will get more opportunities if Fournier is out. But the thing that you could point to if you're looking for reasons to not be on a popular Markel Fultz in that situation is that the Clippers are a very good defensive team, and by taking Fournier off the floor, you become a worse offense overall, which makes it harder for Fultz to be efficient and score.
Sure. And, I mean, I'll say this. Markel Fultz price point, you're not overpaying for him.
Right, not at all. At 5,500, if Augustine is in and Fournier is in, Fultz is like a neutral play.
Yes.
So if those guys are out, he's clearly underpriced. It's just a matter of you're playing the ownership game, and also Alfred Payton is underpriced in a better matchup, and you're probably going to have recency bias going to Markel Fultz.
Yeah, I would undoubtedly have quite a bit of interest in Fultz if these guys end up sitting. I won't say I'd be ecstatic about getting to Markel Fultz in this spot against the Clippers, and I'm not expecting a repeat triple-double here. But I think he's fine. I would prefer Alfred Payton over him. Look, Markel Fultz keeps putting up big games, on a consistent basis, then I'd be more than willing to change my tune. Now, to circle back or come full circle on all of this, Fultz doesn't need to be a 1.3 fantasy point per minute guy if he's going to be priced at 5,500 and if there's going to be injuries. Totally understandable.
Yeah, and one other thing to add, because I've been making the Payton and Fultz comparison. just because they're the same price point. There's going to be a lot of lineups where I just have both because I think they're both good plays.
Right. Yep. And we'll pay close attention to all of these injuries because they're going to have a huge impact on everything that happens. Augustine's doubtful again. MCW. And if Augustine was out, Carter Williams played, he probably would get some decent run. He's questionable. And Evan Fournier, like you said, questionable. We'll touch on all of that in the deeper dive as well. Circle back on everything. What else from Orlando here? I know it's very tough with the injury news still pending, but we'll try and close out the Magic and go to the Clippers.
Yes, I mean, the one constant is that Vooch is affordable. Like on DraftKings, he's $700 less expensive than Gobert. So that makes him look like a pretty appealing option, getting probably 33, 34 minutes. Gets a usage bump if Fournier is out, but even if Fournier is in, he's still around a 1.3 fantasy point per minute guy. If Augustine and Fournier sit, you should get another 30 to 32 minutes for Terrence Ross. You should get another 30 to 32 minutes for Wes Iwundu, who last night probably had the best game he'll ever have in the NBA. You got 38 minutes for Gordon. Like, it has the potential to be it's probably my least favorite spot, like in DFS, where you get a team that's shorthanded and relatively inexpensive, but also in like a terrible matchup where they could just get absolutely massacred.
Right. This could turn ugly pretty quickly. Vooch definitely going to benefit anytime you take somebody like Fournier off the court. And then lastly, if Fournier sits, is there any spot where Terrence Ross is affordable enough to get to?
I think so. He's 5,300 on DraftKings. On FanDuel, he is 4,600, which is crazy. So obviously better on FanDuel than DraftKings, but I think if you're going to get 31, 32 minutes from Ross, if Augustine and Fournier are out, it becomes really appealing. Like, obviously he's going to close barring really weird circumstances if either of those guys are out. So that's the other thing too with Ross is with their normal rotation when everyone's healthy, the closing lineup is going to have three of Fultz, Augustine, Ross, and Fournier. Normally it's Fultz, Augustine, and Fournier. If one of those guys is out, then Ross is going to be in the closing lineup most of the time. So it makes a big deal for him.
A lot of our chat are like mega Terrence Ross haters. Based on
understandable.
What's up?
I said it's understandable.
Right, based on the fact that he's very scoring dependent. But listen, with Fournier off the court, now keep in mind he's going to play a lot. He would play more minutes with. Actually, I don't think his rotations would change all that much, except getting extra minutes on top of his usual rotations.
Right. He still, like yesterday, he still came off the bench. The biggest difference was that he played the final 4.5 minutes of the game. So instead of getting 26, 27 minutes, he got 31 minutes.
Exactly. Yeah. And if you take Fournier off the court, he's a 1 fantasy point per minute guy on the season. So now, like I said, you still have to put all of this in context, but Terrence Ross on the year, 0.87 fantasy points per minute. Without Fournier, it definitely would help him out. He'd get a lot of those minutes as, one of the – I see it this way, right? Like in terms of usage, outside of Vooch and maybe even ahead of Vooch in certain games, Terrence Ross is going to be a guy that's out there gunning. So there's at least always the potential for him to put up quality numbers. It's just a matter of like on DraftKings, I would take Fultz over Ross any day of the week if Fournier's out, only because Fultz can pad those numbers with assists and a few rebounds where it's very tough to Ross to get there if he's not scoring.
Right, I agree.
How about the Clippers? Paul George out again. Kawhi Leonard has come up above 10K on DraftKings, which is, in a spot like this where he should be.
The minutes last night were the big thing for Gordon. He played almost 38 minutes, but I think that 5,700 on FanDuel looks really good for him, but FanDuel pricing today just across the board seems really, really cheap. On DraftKings, he's 6K, which I still wouldn't say is overpriced. But if Fournier is in, then I would be a lot less interested in Gordon. If he's out and you can project 36 minutes again, then at a higher usage rate, then I start to become interested.
Okay. So Giannis, Leonard, we'll get to Jokic next, Rudy Gobert, Devin Booker. All of these guys are above 10 or 9K on DraftKings. When you factor in price and matchup and everything, where would Kawhi Leonard fall for you?
Second.
Behind Giannis, of course.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think second. I'll say I need to bump up my rates for Jokic. I haven't done that yet, but it's close between Kawhi and Jokic probably, but I think I'd give the edge to Kawhi.
Do you want to get to anybody specifically from the Clippers against this Magic team?
Other than Kawhi?
Other than Kawhi,
yeah. Not really. I think that Lou Williams' salary is still affordable. The issue with Williams is one that you point out a lot, and it's that if this game does go sideways, he's like the first one off the floor.
Yeah.
He subbed against Cleveland. He subbed out with like 10 and a half minutes to go in the fourth quarter while Montrezl Harrell played until like the 2-minute mark. So I think that I would say Lou is my second favorite option behind Kawhi, because I do think that he benefits with Paul George out, because you're not obviously getting staggered minutes from Kawhi and George where Williams is always playing with one of them. Now you're getting him running that second unit again, which is really appealing. So Kawhi's number one for me, then Williams, then Harrell. But I think that Kawhi's the guy that I get to the most for sure.
Okay, yeah, me too. Outside of this, it's tough for me. Lou Williams loses that rotation in the second half. Like, gets crushed by it in the event that this game does blow out. And also, maybe this will be the day, but when he gets the minutes, he's very productive. There's no question about that. I don't think this is a slate where you need to get to Lou Williams, though. So I really don't have a ton of issue getting away from him. But in tournaments, I like Lou. I think that you'll probably see ownership relatively low. That would be my guess. Okay, we got an ownership update finally. Let's see where Lou Williams is coming in at. First of all, Alfred Payton, as expected, he's right now projected for the 6th highest ownership on the slate. A lot of guys projected in that 20 range, though. And then Lou Williams around 17%, basically the same as guys like Faults. So, yeah, okay, that makes sense. Wes Iwundu right now projected for quite a bit of ownership, Adam, at $3,200 on DraftKings. Before we move to this last game, why don't you said probably had his best game ever. Popular Wes Iwundu is very, very unappealing. Of course, you have to have Fournier and everyone out anyway, but that's pretty ugly if he's going to be that popular.
Yeah, the only way it's appealing at all, and I use that word very, very, very lightly, is if Fournier and Augustine are out. He played 31 and a half minutes last night. He played really well. At 3,200, we talk about it a lot. It's really hard for someone to actually like kill your lineup unless it's Elliot Kobo or something getting like 8 points. But Iwundu's not a good fantasy producer. His rates certainly don't go up playing with Faults and Vooch for more minutes. So I would, if he's getting ownership, I would be cautious, especially on a slate like this where you do have other spots you can go to. You have Cam Johnson that you can pivot to. You have a bunch of guys from Denver that you can go to that are also going to be popular, but that are at least good fantasy producers, and you don't need that many value guys in your lineup.
All right, let's close it out. Golden State Warriors, Denver Nuggets. The Nuggets 6-point favorites on the road, 212.5 total. No surprise, any game the Nuggets are in seems to be the lowest projected scoring game of the night. 109.3 implied for them, 103.3 for the Warriors. Let's kick it off with the Warriors. Damian Lee got a nice 3-year deal with the Warriors. Going to rejoin the starting lineup here. He's played decent enough basketball. Nothing spectacular, but he's been serviceable, to say the least. Meanwhile, D'Angelo Russell, $7,500 on DraftKings, can project him for a lot more minutes than we had seen earlier, 34, 35 minutes recently. Been a very productive player at a mid-7K price point. I know it's Denver, but I still have some interest there. Their defense is solid, but still unspectacular. And then you're talking about guys like Draymond Green, who has come down below 6,000 on DraftKings, 5,800. Let's start with the backcourt and work our way up to the front court here.
Yeah, so I think Russell's the one that stands out. He's coming off an absolutely awful game his last time out, which personally really hurt me. But he shot 5 for 17 from the field, still played 34 minutes in a blowout, was in late in the fourth quarter. Denver hasn't been that good defensively lately. They play slow, which, as you mentioned, is a problem. But he's just too cheap for the production you get out of him and for him playing 33, 34 minutes. So he'll be one of the highest owned guys on the slate, I would think. Right now we have him on DraftKings projected second highest owned behind Donovan Mitchell, which I think makes perfect sense. But I think, he's a really good option. Damian Lee at 5K should play 30 to 32 minutes. I think that's a pretty neutral play, as is $5,800 Draymond. Spellman has been playing mid 20s in minutes. His price tag's gotten to where I think it's kind of a last guy in situation where there's better values, there's better raw scores, but there's going to be some lineups where he just kind of ends up there. So I'd say that the only real priority for me is Russell, because I think he's just clearly underpriced for how many minutes he's playing right now. And then the other guys, they're just sort of there.
Yeah, I really like D'Angelo Russell here. Now, like you said, projected for very high ownership, second highest on the slate right now. On FanDuel, he's still up there, but he's not the highest or one of the top 5 or 6. And then on Yahoo, he's definitely a lot further down. But yeah, on DraftKings, 7,500 is incredibly appealing to me. It's tough to argue that anyone outside of him is a priority, like you mentioned. You're getting guys like Draymond Green that are definitely going to get some attention here. In this game, overall, I think we'll get a decent amount of ownership, but a lot of this depends on what we're getting on the other side, and that is the fact that Gary Harris was out, Jamal Murray was active, but Jamal Murray was carried off the court in this game last night. So playing the second of a back-to-back, Jamal Murray leaves the court with an injured ankle. He avoided structural damage, but there is no chance he plays today. Obviously, played only 15 minutes in that game. So let's go ahead and take a look at what we got from this game yesterday when Murray came off the court after playing 15 minutes and see how we can kind of parlay that into today's information and today's recommendations. Because when Murray came off the court, well, you know what? I'll turn it over to you. When Murray came off the court, what did we see? And how did it affect the rest of the game in that third quarter?
Yeah, so we got, as expected, we got Monte Morris starting the second half. And in the second half, Morris played 7.5 minutes in his first stint, 3.5 in the second, and then subbed out with 2 minutes to go in a blowout. So would have played about 13 minutes in the second half. That would obviously be 26 for the game. It's worth noting that PJ Dozier was the backup point guard, and he played really, really well off the bench. So
that's where the blowout came from.
Right. So I think you probably got a little bit longer stint for Dozier than maybe would have been anticipated. But either way, if you go with let's say you go with a 28-minute projection for Monte Morris, he's going to look like a pretty good option. You give the other 20 minutes to PJ Dozier based on yesterday's rotation. Obviously, the caveat here is that the bench rotation, especially for the guards for Mike Malone, is very subject to change. But I'm okay with expecting Dozier to get those backup point guard minutes based on how he played yesterday. I think that Morris obviously looks like a really good value, though, if you're going to get about 28 minutes.
Yeah. Morris in that last game played, like you just broke it down. And yet the blowouts began to develop when PJ Dozier was out there, along with Mason Plumlee, Hernan Gomez, Porter, Will Barton. Those were the guys that were out there at the time. I would say, 23 minutes for Morris, or 24 minutes, you say 28. I think he could play more than that, but putting him at 28 seems like more reasonable, and you're going to get 28 minutes, you're going to get a lot of him anyway, so I don't think you need to get egregious with projecting him for a ton of additional run here. What about Michael Porter Jr.? He played 28 minutes, was the first player off the bench in this one. There was no Gary Harris. The starting lineup was Jamal Murray, Torrey Craig, Will Barton, Jeremy Grant, and Nikola Jokic. So, to just kind of lay all this out, Jamal Murray's doubtful. I don't see there's any way he plays. Paul Millsap's questionable. He's been out the past few games. And then Gary Harris is questionable as well. So this could turn in a number of different directions. But right now, we'll assume Murray's out. And I don't want to assume anything on Harris and Millsap, but let's assume they are out on the second of a back-to-back. They missed both games. How does that play for you with Porter and Craig and Jeremy Grant?
So the kind of nice thing about Millsap and Harris is that it obviously has an impact, but all things considered, it's relatively minimal. If you look at the rotations yesterday, you had obviously Jeremy Grant started for Paul Millsap, and then subbing in for him was Juancho Hernan-Gomez, who played basically all of the backup minutes behind Grant. Hernan-Gomez isn't someone that we're really rostering. So that's not really that much of a concern, whether it's Grant starting and Hernan-Gomez behind him or Millsap starting and Grant coming off the bench. It doesn't make a big difference for us. And then Harris, you had Torrey Craig start. That's another guy that, even he played 26 minutes yesterday. We're still not rostering Torrey Craig, so it doesn't really matter. Michael Porter was subbing in for Will Barton, who was being staggered with the second unit. In the first quarter, he subbed in for Jamal Murray, and then
he played in the fourth quarter with Barton.
Yeah, in the third, he subbed in for more. No,
for Barton.
In the third,
again.
He subbed
in for Barton in the third quarter again.
Barton subbed in for Craig. Yeah, so Dozier subbed in for Morris. Barton subbed out and Porter subbed in the third, and then Barton subbed in for
Craig.
Yeah, for Craig.
Yeah.
So in both cases, you had Barton being staggered, which made Porter the first guy off the bench, subbing in for him. Porter played well. I would assume that he gets those minutes again, that he's the first guy in for Barton, assuming they run a similar rotation. His price tag actually dropped on DraftKings too to 3,600. He's a scorer. He's a good per minute producer. So Porter looks like one of the better values to me, someone who the minutes should be there, and he's actually a good producer. And I don't think, if Millsap's out, it helps. If Millsap and Harris are out, it certainly helps to solidify Porter's minutes. But even if they're in, I think that there's a path for him to still be a viable option at how cheap he is.
I think so too. And this is huge. I mean, this affects everything on this slate. So worth paying very close attention. Unfortunately, it's a 10:30 game. I mean, that's really going to suck, though, Adam, the fact that so much of this slate is contingent on what happens in this Denver game, which is a 10:30 p.m. Eastern time lock or tip.
Yeah, and the Orlando game.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are the two biggest ones for injuries.
I don't do it. Someone had asked me, I don't know, a couple weeks ago if I ever considered just not playing the early games in these late news situations. And I said that there's a couple slates a year where I might consider it. This is one where I'll at least toy with the idea of making my lineups before lock and just including guys that I really like, Ingram, Randall, guys like that. And then just having maximum flexibility for the Denver game and the Orlando game. Not sure if that's the route that I'll go, because normally I talk myself off of it, but I think having as much flexibility as possible to make the best lineups you can with all of the information available would be a big advantage tonight.
No question. I guess the question too, though, is if Fournier's out, how good of plays really are the Orlando Magic? They're good. Are they worth not playing players from Phoenix and New York or from Utah and New Orleans?
Right.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, and I agree. The thing is, the Phoenix. I like the Phoenix New York game so much is what really makes it tough for me. So yeah, I mean, the way I'll probably approach it is just pay as much attention as I can to the news and guess as good as I can. But definitely, if you're playing on a late swap site, plan on being around your computer tonight.
Yep. There's no question that with Denver, everything can change. I mean, obviously, just project for Murray to be out. There's no. Is he already officially ruled? I don't know. I don't think there's an official out, but he's not playing. So
right.
Yeah. He's not playing. I don't know if he's officially been ruled out by the team. It doesn't matter. How much does the Millsap news really matter? Is it, you know what I mean?
It matters in that it solidifies minutes for Porter, and obviously it gets more minutes for Grant, and it also gives more usage to Jokic. But like all things considered, when you're talking about a starting player being in or out, it has about as small an impact as it possibly could.
Right. Like, it's not the same. It's like Jonathan Isaac in Orlando.
Right. And the same goes for Harris. Like, he's not a high usage guy, and the guy behind him is not a high usage guy.
But when there's all three of them out, now it's more so minutes than anything else.
Right. If all three are out,
that's 100 minutes. Almost like 95 minutes total.
Right. If all three are out, the Mike Malone effect goes down drastically, and you can start to feel safer about the minutes.
Absolutely. Hey, there's free content at awesemo.com today. NBA projections. How about that, dude? That's Awesemo Plus Platinum. You get a look behind the curtain. NBA projections will be up. They should be up by now. NHL fantasy point projections as well. So both of them free today. If you want to go head over and check that out. Remember, NBA Strategy is the promo code. One word at checkout to get you 50% off your first week. And of course, check out our sponsor, Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports. They are the only place you can become a baller and the only place you can get $30 in YSRPs, which are as good as cash to play on the site to play and win real money when you deposit using our link, the Cash Buildings Block article, and the sign-up code AWESEMO. All right, that'll do it for us, man. 5 up, 5 down. I'd say pretty long show, but we covered everything you possibly could. Any final thoughts before we head out?
Should be a really annoying day to write the deep dive, so I'm glad I'm not doing it. And come back for the 5 o'clock show. Hopefully we'll have a little bit more information, some more news that we can go on to help make lineups closer to lock.
Thanks to everyone that contributed in the super chat. Congrats on your wins. If you enjoy the show, hit us with a thumbs up. It's the easiest way to help support us so we can keep doing free content here at awesemo.com. Good luck today. Adam and I will be back with you, though, for the deeper dive at 5 p.m. I believe
5:30 probably,
5:30
right?
p.m. Yes, you are correct. 5:30 p.m. We'll be back with you. But plenty of other content throughout the day to stick around for. I think there's no football. Golf teed off today, so we've just got the deeper dive coming up at 5:30, live before lock at 6:30, and then the early bird podcast tonight. So go enjoy the day, get back, do some work, be productive, or don't. I don't care. We'll see you back here tonight on the deeper dive. Good luck, everyone.